Nice cat, Ron.
Yeah, he's very
Yo.
quiet.
Demon.
Got him from the shelter. Apparently, he
Do you know what happened to Saber?
he's weak.
Oh, well, there we go.
Oh, there it is. There he is.
Cool,
YouTube
cool.
Studio.
I'm back.
I wish I had a webcam.
This webcam is like 10 years old, probably. I'm surprised that it worked.
I had one
It's
before, but
old Logitech.
yeah, I had one of those. What was it? The C920, but I have no idea where it is.
Well, I have a box over there, just out of line of sight from the camera, where I keep all of my electric scrap. So
Mm.
Uh,
Well, I have one, but like it. I mean, like it. I mean, like I don't know. It's the sun is setting right now. You know.
Yeah, you
it
look
would make
fine,
weird
man. You
lighting.
look
I get it.
fine.
Also, you're just not gonna look as. It's not going to be as interesting as here.
Yeah, it's. I don't look it. I don't look good.
Well, I mean, I don't look good either. I just make it seem more interesting by making the light seem weird colors. Actually, that's not true. Literally, what happened is my sister, when we were coming back here to Illinois from California, she went and she got me a this light, and she said, "Oh, hey, it's blue, so it's going to make you really calm." And
Let me
it
see if I
just
can.
looked nice. And I use it in videos now. I don't use it like every day so much because when you use it every day, it strains your eyes really bad. But
So I'm guessing it doesn't make you feel calm.
all right. All right, comrades, we are live. Bienvenidos, compañeros, to another exciting episode of Unidos. Joining me today, we have our good friend, our constant contributor, Joey, aka Duende. We have special guests, Ron, aka the Rugged Midwesterner, Comrade Christopher Sabo, and Comrade Saber. So,
What's up?
welcome, one and all. I'm so glad to have you here. And to those in chat, thank you for joining us. Today, we are going to be going over the revolts that are going on within Haiti and Ecuador, as well as what we can take away from that as far as organizing ourselves within the global north in Western societies. What to do when, or or how to properly be an ally to marginalized groups if you are coming from like a privileged stance, and then just another traditional episode of Unidos. So welcome once again. Y'all were able to hear me, right?
I was able to hear you, my
Yeah, we
friend.
can hear
All
you.
right, fantastic. I'm really paranoid because I'm actually using the like a whole different everything today because like I'm shooting in a totally different area. So yeah, I guess if you guys are okay, I was going to read a little bit of an article about what's going on in Ecuador right now for those who aren't quite familiar, as Joey might be or myself. So y'all okay with that?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, cool. All right.
That's
So
fine.
Get us refreshed on what's going on in Ecuador, and then get us refreshed on what's going on in Haiti, please.
right on. Okay. So this was posted 2 days ago. This is Ecuador's president retreats from capital in face of growing mass protests. In the face of a continuing strike and a mass indigenous mobilization against an IMF-dictated austerity package, Ecuador's president, Lenin Moreno, moved his government from the capital of Quito to the coastal city of Guayaquil, where he is now directing a police state crackdown. This retreat from Ecuador's Andean capital, unprecedented in the country's history, is a measure of the intensity of social and political unrest as Ecuador enters a second week of demonstrations against the draconian austerity program unveiled by the Moreno government in October 1st. On Tuesday, indigenous demonstrators marched through the streets of Quito and occupied the National Congress as well as other government buildings. Late on Tuesday, Moreno decreed a partial curfew near, quote, strategic zones, unquote, like government buildings, which will be overseen by the armed forces. Heavily armed troops have been deployed into the streets of Quito, deploying razor wire barricades to block protesters. The government has responded to the resistance with increasingly dictatorial measures. It has suspended the right to assembly and strike and deployed the military after declaring a state of exception last Wednesday. The emergency rule was ratified by the Supreme Court despite reducing it from 60 to 30 days. The repression has resulted in one death, the wounding of dozens of demonstrators, attacked with rubber bullets, tear gas, baton charges, and have accumulated with 570 arrests. Several detainees, including the leader of the taxi drivers union, face 3-year sentences for, quote, paralyzing public services. Schools have been closed since Thursday, and there are roadblocks since Tuesday in 17 of the 24 provinces. On Sunday, a demonstrator named Raul Chilpe, Raul Chipe was killed by a driver attempting to run over a roadblock in the Azuri province. It just started. On Monday, Moreno said he would not turn back on his decisions and portrayed the protests as looting, vandalism, and violence aimed at destabilizing the government. Well, yeah. He alleged, without providing a shred of evidence, that the mass protests have been instigated and financed by his predecessor, Rafael Correa, and Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Moreno's chief of staff, Juan Sebastian Roldan, contradicted his boss, declaring, "What is happening and what may happen is the sole and exclusive responsibility of the indigenous leaders who have lost control of the situation." Wow, what a fucking prick. Across the eastern and southern provinces, indigenous protesters have captured several military and police convoys, with at least one group of 50 soldiers and 5 policemen held prisoner until Monday, when they were freed. The oil ministry reported that the 3 state-owned Petro Amazonas oil fields in the northeastern provinces had been occupied by people not related to the operation, leading to a 12% fall in national oil production. Workers, students, and indigenous communities have mobilized massively in roadblocks and during the nationwide strike last Thursday and Friday, demanding an immediate end to austerity and the resignation of the Moreno government. So, yeah, so that's pretty much what's going on right now within Ecuador. And Duende was talking about how this has actually been in the works for several years within the indigenous community, and it has basically just reached its boiling point right now. Would you care to elaborate on that, as you were before? Duende? Oh, are you muted?
Hello?
Oh, there you are. Hey!
Sorry. I tried unmuting my mic like 20 times. Sorry.
Okay.
I was like talking like for like 2 minutes. Whatever. So yeah, so in our indigenous communities back home, there's essentially this common thought, which is like the settler state don't represent us. We need to fight against them, etc. And so this was the tipping point. In other words, gas prices were going to go up by 30% overnight. And at that point, that's going to affect the pueblos the most. And so everyone took this time to kind of organize together and show their distrust of the government essentially, and so they started marching. Quichua started marching first to Quito, and then all the other pueblos started joining in, and so now we have this situation where we have a bunch of indigenous. It's indigenous led and also campesino led, and so we have all these poor folks kind of just showing up and protesting against a government that does not represent its people. And of course, the government, what do? They turn to the police, and now we're starting to see people dying. Like I think 5 indigenous leaders have been killed so far. And despite that, we still have videos of this dad who got killed, and his son was like, "My dad just got killed, but I'm still gonna be in the streets fighting." So you see the determination, the organization that is happening in Ecuador right now is a big moment in history, honestly, where we're seeing again an indigenous-led movement go mainstream, because this rarely does go mainstream. And yet people in the United States, people in other places are talking about this. People in Colombia, people in South America are obviously going to be talking about this. And the government is taking the time to kind of post propaganda to say that these movements are left led because of the Venezuela government. The Venezuelan government is doing this when it has nothing to do with this. It's just the Lenin Moreno, I believe that's his name. Is it just does not do justice for the people living there.
Yeah, I mean, this is the type of shit that often gets overlooked within like the peaceful protests that you see like in America and the UK, and like, you know, once again, just to make it easier, the global north. Hold on, I want to give a shout out. Welcome, Suck My Opinion. Thanks for coming on the stream. I hope you were able to hear a little bit of what we were talking about.
Yeah,
okay,
I will.
Cool. All right, cool. And then I'm just gonna finish up my thought here. But yeah, this is the difference between like the type of protests that go on in the global south and the shit that goes up in the global north. Like, I think it's funny, like when you think about it, people like leftists on the left will say like these protests are too liberal, like when talking about like the climate protests or shit like that, or like, you know, the DAPL protests or anything like that. And it's just like, okay, but the other alternative is people being is thought leaders and community leaders and shit like that being murdered where they stand and having their children step over their dead bodies to continue the fucking struggle. Okay, we're not there yet in the what, like within these Western countries. We're not there yet. We're getting fucking close, in my opinion. But you know, this is the real shit. This is what happens during a real revolution. And the longer a revolution takes, the bloodier it will be. So, you know, this is why it's important to talk about the shit that isn't the Trump administration or isn't about the fucking Democratic primaries and shit like that. This is the shit that is going to be coming up north, because that is it's only natural progress as the wealth gap keeps getting substantially wider, as people are fleeing from climate change. Like, all this shit is just it's just about to break. Like, the dam's about to break.
Definitely.
And we need to learn from the determination of our comrades down south to know what we are going to be up against and what the true sacrifices we are going to have to do during a revolution. So, and the same could be said with what's going on in Haiti. I mean,
Well, just to or not to interrupt, but if you guys want to know more, there's people that are actually reporting. There's just people that are reporting, and they're posting constantly on Facebook. This username Inti Kondo. They're from Pueblo Chibuleo, and so they're an indigenous reporter, and they're constantly posting information on what's going on in there.
Can you throw links in the private chat so I can put them into the YouTube chat?
Yeah,
All right, cool.
that.
And
I wanted
sorry, go ahead.
I asked in a private chat earlier. I don't know if you were able to address it. If there were any like resources, well, not just indigenous resources, but maybe just in general resources for like activists, for basically for basically people donating, that people could donate towards like like activists that are like marching in the streets right now. Like people in the global north could like basically donate to like money, food, shelter, blankets, and things like that. Because right now, I think if people want to be like to be like a good ally, one thing that like people could do is like donate in some way, shape, or form, and then also in addition to that, spread the message that these people are fighting capitalism in some way, shape, or form as well.
I unfortunately don't know any type of organizations that are doing that. Unfortunately, a lot of indigenous communities, they don't have access to these things. So if I do find one, I'll let y'all know. But as of right now, it's just I'm not gonna I don't want to lie and say yeah, or I don't know where the money would be going to certain organizations. So I'm very distrustworthy of those things. But if I do find one that I do trust, I'll let y'all know.
I mean,
Absolutely.
and it kind of sucks too because like it's really hard to find like NGOs to trust down south. Like a lot of them end up just being ways for uh, imperialist governments to kind of like funnel money through, or just do a bunch of shady shit. So it's really hard to be able to send any sort of like good down that way.
Well, I remember like there was like I remember like when I was in a band one time, and like I was playing like a charity show for like the No Dapple cause, and we were raising money for the water protectors, and my band was able to donate like a box full of like canned goods and blankets, and we were able to ship them there. I mean, I can't say for certain as to whether or not it got there safely, but I mean, like, we were able to give it to a group of people whom I would say we trusted. You know.
Yeah, yeah, and I think with that sort of thing being within the continental United States, it's obviously easier to track how that shit's going to get there. But with there being so much in between, as far as like sending support down to like indigenous groups who primarily exist out of the rainforest, um, it is kind of hard to do anything like that.
Well,
But
most of these communities are not from the rainforest. They're more
oh,
from
they're
the
not.
Andes. They're
Oh,
from the
my bad.
Andes. Some of them are from the rainforest, but a
Oh,
big
okay.
part of the fight is going on is in the Andes, actually.
Oh, okay. All right. My bad. That's my fault. Thank you. Appreciate it for correcting me. Um,
Right.
and
I'm just
then
I'm just trying to critically think of like how we can get like supplies to these people. How we can like actually. I'm trying to problem solve along with these people in a
Can,
way. You
can the
know.
population can they hold weapons allowed to have weaponry to what extent can they have weapons?
I think that was mentioned in the article. They said that they just put restrictions on the kinds of weapons that they could have, and they'd even place people into curfew, right?
yeah, they did. They established razor wires. They did. But I mean, the thing is, though, most of the time, anytime there is like an indigenous or a campesino like revolution, they're not arming themselves. They're not armed in the same way that maybe a United States militia might be armed. Like a lot of the times, they're using very like if they do have rifles, they're not going to be able to. They're usually not on the same level as the military that they're fighting against. You know what I mean? A lot of the times they're running in there with like like hunting rifles and machetes and shit like that. So yeah. So even if they are armed, they're not armed to the extent that military is.
there's already a stereotype that the communities are prone to violence anyway. So there's already going to be pushback against violence in the communities just because
Hmm.
anytime something happens like that, unfortunately, there's this constant pressure to be kind of like a model minority, and that happens a lot in South America. So there is like a let's not be violent, let's be peaceful, let's do this
Yeah.
peaceful. That is being like kind of talked about within some of the communities.
Yeah,
I
I,
mean,
I get that with a lot of like anti-fascist groups too. I get that.
yeah. So I mean, it's really fucking messy. I mean, I
But
would say. Oh, go ahead.
the president was forced to go to Guayaquil and basically distance themselves because the indigenous communities are coming strong, especially because like 5 have been killed already. So um, right now they're just constantly pushing to make sure that the government is and, they want something else, something that represents the pueblos more. And as of right now, these governments just don't.
So
No,
did
of
these
course not.
people did they get vote? Did the president get voted in democratically, or is it just something that he did and then he just turned against the people, that kind of
I'm
thing?
pretty sure he did get voted democratically. I mean, but I don't know the history of Ecuador and its politics. Most of the pueblos don't vote. There's no access to. Most people that vote have to have like a
Yeah.
phone, things like that. They have to be in the capital cities, to be honest. And most of these communities come from village communities. When I go back home and I go back to the pueblo, like my phone does not work. It's useless. There's no signal. There's no service.
Yeah.
So already indigenous communities are disenfranchised. So typically they don't vote. You
Yeah.
know.
So
Yeah, it's very
what you're
regional.
saying? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, yeah, I just think like when it comes to certain like the ways that certain elections are handled, like nowadays, um, one thing that always crosses my mind is the people that can't actually get access to this voting in the first place. And so it's like, how do you expect to run a society where a lot of people, especially indigenous people, don't have access to or don't necessarily want access to those technologies? How would they participate in elections that would
I mean,
actively be against their interests?
it's basically built around just us not participating in general. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing like in the United States, like in the Dakotas and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
I
where
was
they,
going to bring that up.
yeah, where
Oh.
they. Oh, I mean, Ron, you can go ahead and speak on it.
No, I guess I can. So what you're talking about, people having access to voting restricted to them, is something that happens here in the States too, especially with indigenous populations. There was I want to say it was North Carolina. There was this big kerfluffle where a bunch of indigenous tribes were told that they needed an address. They needed a physical address in order to vote in voting booths. And a lot of these people, they live on reservations and they don't have addresses. They just have like mailing boxes. And that meant functionally that they couldn't vote. And a big stink was raised about that. And ultimately, what happened is that nothing got done because it was too close to election time. So yeah, I mean, you're asking like how is a society expected to function when people don't get to participate? But like that's the point. Certain people in the systems that we have, like they're built around certain people not participating. I'm sure Suck My Opinion can tell us about voter disenfranchisement in the South too. It's really bad there too. But you know.
That's crazy.
Yeah, man. It's a tooth. Without from what I'm understanding, I would say in the entire North America and South America, it's the most distinct forms of inequality because you have indigenous, you have colonized people, descendants of slaves, European, uh, and however they can do it, they trying to create a two-tier system within whoever it is, but I all I know is, man, they're gonna have to, from places I see it in South America, it's gonna have to get real, man, because they don't have the access to what we have in America. There are many fights in South America that have never happened. They've never had a civil rights movement. They've never had a movement for indigenous people. Camazotz, you're right, man. Like a lot of people don't want to hear it, man, but it's got to get real down there, really
Yeah.
real, man. And
Well,
that's
And I will say there
Uh,
have been movements for Indigenous people, and they still the thing is that they're still going on to this day. I'm sorry, Duende, I didn't mean to talk over you. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, there are a lot of movements going on in South America and Central America and the Caribbean and Mexico that include indigenous people leading it. It's just we're invisible. Like the fight that we fight is invisibility. We are never report, like even in Brazil, people, the government there is trying to push these indigenous people out, and you know who's leading the protests are the Bosques there, the Bosque communities there that are leading the fight because they're mostly affected by it. In South America as well. Black folks and indigenous folks are usually in the front lines. It's just not
Yeah, it's
reported.
yeah, and especially in Brazil, because like a lot of the because like here's the thing, Brazil was one of the last countries to abolish slavery in the world. Like I think they were the last country to abolish slavery. Like so like all the African slaves were forced out for their safety a lot of the times to go form communities out in the rainforest, and then they ended up um banding together with the Indios outside of Brazil. And so a lot of the struggle and a lot of they share the same struggle, like shoulder to shoulder. So I think if as much as we all want to be able to contribute materially from where we are, our best way of contributing to these causes is to just raise awareness for this. So the links that I'll put the link in the chat again. So that link that Duende shared with us, hit them up. Try to spread the word from that reporter the best that you can. I also recommend subscribing to Anticonquista. They I read up a lot about like what goes on through them as well. That's how I found out about all this stuff, because there isn't a lot of talk about this in Western media, and it's very similar, and it's the same thing for if you look like whatever, like what is it like 250 years ago, 300 years ago, I don't know, my dates could be off, but during the Haitian slave rebellion, when like the newspapers didn't want to report that the slaves were revolting in Haiti because they didn't want the slaves that were still in America to hear that that was an option for them. So it's the same. So it's basically the same thing where, keeping the vocal minority from making headline news where they are, for example, ousting their president and forcing their president out of his office. And same thing like in Haiti, what's going on in Haiti right now, where the poor people are fucking fed up with being taken advantage of, so they're fighting back. I'm surprised that there was even some reports, however short it was short that it was reported on, of Puerto Rico getting rid of their governor. I mean, that was only on the news for I think like 3 days before it was shut out by something else that was really dumb. So so it's like all this stuff happens. It's just very hard for these things to be taken seriously, because it will, as it should, incite massive movements. Like we should all be showing solidarity in some way or another with these people who have been fighting basically for what, 5 centuries?
I have a good point to bring up about this. Like, okay, so obviously I'm probably the only person in the UK in this chat right now.
Yeah, you are.
No. So if it wasn't, for one thing, I would say in terms of just people in general, I'd say the only other person I know that may be in the UK is Angie Speaks. But other than that, it's just me, literally just me. And I only have like 300 subscribers, which is something crazy to me. But other than that, like I think in terms of this particular situation and even the Haiti situation, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, I have not seen anything on the news talking about any of those two situations, which is something ridiculous. If I wasn't in contact with you guys or other people that are in the spreadtube/leftube community, I would have no idea what is going on in Haiti or in Ecuador. and that is something that's a huge issue. Like when it comes to people in like maybe the US, in North America or South America, you can hear it in sort of tertiary things. Maybe someone brought it up, maybe you may have seen a tweet on Twitter, but everything in terms of people that are away from that have to go out of their way to such an extent to where they have barely any information about what's going on. And because of the distance, it's even harder for us to, or like for the few people that are in tune with what's going on, to participate in some way. So that's why I want to stress that if anyone is listening that may be outside, maybe in Europe somewhere, maybe even in Africa or Asia somewhere, the most important thing that we can do, in my opinion, is just to get our eyes on people that can maybe do some kind of direct action or praxis to help those people out in some way, shape, or form. Even if it is, again, as you said before, just amplifying voices in some way, making videos, sharing, retweeting things that will take a second of someone's time, but can maybe act as a catalyst to improve the situation for the indigenous people that are suffering and, as you said before, dying even as well. Like this is something that I've been thinking about as I've been diving deeper into leftist ideologies. It's just like the indigenous people, whether it's in the Americas, what we would refer to as Americas now, or in Africa, wherever it is, have been exploited so much so that it's getting to a point where we're reaching a tipping point and people are revolting, people are rising up and fighting for their rights and stuff. So yeah, that's all I can say pretty much.
Yeah, and I also still I want to try to give more awareness as well for the shit that's going on in Africa, because right now, to my knowledge, somebody brought it to my attention a while ago that the rainforest in Africa is has also been burning for a while because of corporate interest from China. So it's not, so yeah, sure, like it's the Amazon is more popular, I guess, in the wherever the fuck we are, but but the same shit for almost the exact same reasons is also happening in Africa. And Africa, like if you look at, like if you take into account the history of Mexico, Central America, and South America, how we weren't able to ever benefit from our resources, which are still to this day supporting everything in the world for the most part. But because we are starting to run dry, Africa is now supporting that for the new imperialists, which are India and China. And it's like it's this cycle just starting over again. And
well, to be honest, I would say that Africa may be even more so exploited, even in the sense that when you're talking about the people that's labor was the prerequisite for the whole global capitalist system in general. And so it's like
absolutely
both people have to, both areas, both continents have to unite in some way, shape, or form. Like I was in Africa, East Africa. I just returned like a few weeks ago. I was there for a couple of weeks, and as you said, the rainforests are in trouble there. But the thing is, like when you look at the South America, for example, the rainforest is mainly in Brazil and then in a few neighboring countries. But when you look at Africa, it's spread across the entire continent. Like there were times where I'd be driving for hours and hours and ends, and all you see is just trees and trees and trees and trees, so beautiful green trees and forests. And you can see based on certain things that are happening on the news, based on certain investments, that over time those things will be jeopardized as much as the rainforest is now. And obviously, as we're dealing with the climate crisis, it's only going to get exponentially worse as time goes on. So yeah, that's also something that we have to pay a lot of attention to. But yeah, it's ridiculous. It's definitely ridiculous.
I mean, I always say this, I think every UNIDOS stream that we do, but Joey, man, like I am so grateful that you give your time to lend your voice to this, because I mean, you always say like you're nobody special, or you just do whatever, and I don't want but hey, man, like I 100% always appreciate your time that you give to this, because like your perspective is much needed, is very very needed. So thank you again, comrade. I just want to interject with that.
You flatter me too much.
I want to emphasize that it's always good to have someone on the ground or someone around the ground reporting on what's going on right now, right there. That's always vital for if you want to go, especially if you want to go and help a group that's suffering some sort of indignity or rebelling against some kind of oppression. You need to have word from people who are there, or you're going to fuck it up. And
Yeah.
that's important. It's good that you're here. I'm also grateful that you're here.
I just want to, before we start talking into Haiti, I just kind of want to like brainstorm for because I know that, because here's the thing, like us, a lot of the people that are coming in to watch this stream, and a lot of us, or all of us who are in this stream right now, I mean, Duende is already doing what he does when he can in real life as it stands. But I mean, for us within our situation, once again, in my opinion, one of the best forms of praxis that you can do is to just spread the word and amplify voices that aren't from white people. I hate to say it like that, but I mean that's really it. Like, and if like we really need to not let this fucking we can't let this message like you like Saber said it. Like he had no fucking idea that this shit was going on. So like, so yeah, so even if you only have like 20 subscribers, or if you only have like 10 Twitter followers or whatever, that's 10 more people that didn't know about this before, right? If you only and that's at the very minimum, that's what we can do.
Yeah,
is
people
just to spread
underestimate
this.
it based on how big certain people are on Twitter, but you have to think about 10 people are actually 10 real existing people in the real world. That like one of those people could retweet it, and then someone else could retweet that, and then 10 more people could
Yeah.
see that, and then 100
Or
more.
put it on your
Yeah,
Facebook
exactly.
page, like whatever. If it's something that, like, if us talking about this shit that's going on really makes you heated that, you know, nobody's talking about it or whatever, one of my favorite things to do in a video game, like one of the best things that I like to do in a video game, is you take like $1.75 and change in quarters, and you go to a newspaper, like one of the newspaper dispensers if they have them in your area, and you just fucking load up all the newspapers with flyers of leftist propaganda or just leftist media that you know people need to hear, and then you shut it, and then you turn off your console, and then you go about your day because you've just beaten the game. So yeah. So that's
Praxis in a
yeah,
video game.
in a video game. Yeah.
But I would say this though, you know, a lot of people, you say that they don't know what's going on. I mean, I don't know particularly what's going on in Ecuador in every particular state, but you got to know the history of colonization. If you know
and then it's still alive, and it's still going.
If you know what colonization was and what it did to this world, I mean, the whole point in Colombia, Ecuador, all of this is the descendants of European settlers mixed with indigenous people are just attacking the indigenous people. It doesn't even, it's not even, it all stems from colonizations. And people, I gotta say this, people always talking about the Soviet Union, talking about China, which did some horrific things. But we do not talk about the colonization of Africa, North America, South America, Australia. I mean, goes on and on, Southeast Asia. That did not stop. Persecution under colonization has never stopped. So once you realize that, then the whole world might see a little clearer to you. You know, you can. It's not a surprise. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It never ended.
Yeah, it hasn't ended. I mean,
I agree with you. The funny thing is though, people are just so unaware that I'll be walking through university and people will just come up to me being like, "Oh shit, an Indian, let me ask you some questions," and they don't even realize I'm from South America until I tell them I'm from South America, and it's like, wait, what? There's still native people over there? It's like that. It's to that level. When there's more native people south of the border of the United States border than there are in North America in general. But it's a lack of awareness that people have of the history of Mexico, Central, South America. They just have no idea. So when it comes to like advocating for the pueblos back home, I really am starting in ground zero, because the only people that really do know are folks from there because they live there and they see it. But when we come here, like into the United States, ooh, like I'm literally starting from ground zero.
Bro, you can
Yeah.
imagine someone being in the UK. This is all so new to me. I'm just thinking, like, the only thing, like, the education system here, in terms of all the history of Western civilization, so trash. I'm telling you. Like, we learn about Black History Month since I was a kid, but we only learn about I Have a Dream. That's literally the only thing we learned about Black History Month. I Have a Dream, Martin Luther
I
King. We didn't
know,
learn about
right?
any of the backstory about nothing, not about Native American culture, not even about the colonization in Africa. It's so
And-
ridiculous. And
And
so
I Have a Dream is
I can
American
imagine for
Black
people that are not
History
even
Month.
in the Western space. Literally, that's literally the point. Like, we don't understand, we don't learn about the reason why he's even doing that speech in the first place. We don't learn about that. We don't learn about the only, I would say the only two things we learn about is I Have a Dream speech and Rosa Parks sitting on the back of the bus. We learn about just a little bit of the backstory as to why they're doing that.
That is ridiculous. There
telling you.
has
Did you
to
even learn about
be.
Emmett Till?
How does
No,
how
no,
does
I had to go out of my way to
Hold on,
find that.
hold on. How the fuck do you guys not learn about like any sort of marginalized
What I'm
like
telling you, okay, so here's
history
what
in
I'll
the
say.
UK? Like, hasn't there been like there? You guys like Europe has like a history, just so much.
What I'm
How do
saying
you
is
not learn
that
about like
here's
what,
what I'll
Michael? How do you
here's
not
what
learn
I'll
about
say.
like black? How do you not learn about like black socialism? How do you not learn
No,
about
okay, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So what I'm saying is, look, we learn about it on such a surface level that we obviously know that, okay, yeah, there was racism back in the day, there was segregation, blah blah blah, but we don't go to the source. Like, there's no there's
Do
no tracing the history back.
where
There's
are
no
you
going
from,
back.
by the way?
Yeah, I live in London, the capital of the UK, and in our education system, they don't.
so?
There's
Do
no
they talk
cohesive.
about? Do they talk about like the Bristol slave trade and everything like that?
No, no, no.
What about I don't know anything about like European history. I'm not gonna lie, like I don't know, or at least like outside of the United States and South and Central American like European history. But civil rights, like what does that look like over there? What does that look like the black communities over there? I know a lot of
Yeah,
Native people
literally.
that do migrate to Europe.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. So in terms of that, all we learn about is just literally the definition of segregation and the main talking points. Like, okay, so we're like, oh, Rosa Parks, blah blah blah. She sat in the back of the bus because
but
of
what about the
racism.
history of London? Like,
Yeah, no, it's all so obscure. It's very obscure.
wow.
And
That's
so
so
I've
fucking
had to go. I've had
crazy.
to go
Like,
so
what
like
I
about
am horrified and
do you guys?
flabbergasted.
I mean, I'm sorry that we're making you like the representative
You know
of
what? No,
your
and
your thing.
this needs to be said because people don't understand how obscure this education system is in London, in the UK.
Because
So yeah,
like,
go on. Tell
so
me,
here's
tell me
But
so
I'm
questions
so
sure,
okay, okay.
I'm sure you learned so much about the BPN over there, right?
about the what?
About the
Uh,
BPN, the British National Party.
No.
Well, okay, never
No,
mind.
All right,
BPN was
so
actually a
all
fairly
right, hold on,
recent
hold
We're
on.
getting off topic.
I got one question. So the superpower that was England, right?
Yeah.
Like imperialized so much of the world.
Yeah.
You guys had so many people, so many nations revolt against you.
Yeah.
And like what? Like you guys just like it's just like oh there was just this little thing that happened.
Yeah.
And then like next chapter,
they colonized other places and they exploited they don't talk about this stuff. You have to find it
what
yourself.
the fuck? Do they not understand? Like, where do they think the queen got all those jewels from? I don't fucking understand. Like those fucking jewels didn't come.
Yeah. No one knows why the queen is the queen. Like she's just there. She's in Buckingham Palace. Like I can
No,
travel.
fuck that, dude. Those diamonds belong to fucking African people.
You really have to
Right.
go out of your way to figure out where all this stuff is happening.
Oh wow, that's
You may see,
insane.
like, you may have parents that have been involved in something. You may have seen a documentary one place or another. You may have seen some YouTube videos, blah blah blah. But in terms of the actual, like, think about it. From like let's say you're 4 years old until you're an adult, right? In school, you're learning about history, we learn about RE, religious education, we learn about all of this stuff. But when it comes to the actual substance of it, we don't learn about the reasons why all this stuff happens. We don't learn about socialism. We don't learn about why these people have fought for their independence. We don't learn about why Martin Luther King was doing his I Have a Dream speech. We don't learn about why Rosa Parks was on that bus in the first place. Okay, so yeah, so like I said before, surface level. Okay, yeah, there's racism.
That's
Of course,
yo, dude. You gotta if you're ever stressing about what content to do, you need to do a fucking video on that.
I'm
I
telling
agree.
all this
Yeah,
stuff out.
absolutely.
And let's get one thing straight, okay? Let's get one thing straight. Africa, it is the richest continent in the world, and it is being robbed
Exactly.
by China. It is being robbed by the United Kingdom. It is being robbed by Brazil. It is being robbed by the United States and Turkey and Russia. It is being robbed by all these major superpowers for multiple resources across the world,
Wait,
For hundreds
Brazil's
of
in
years,
it yet?
including
hundreds
the
of years.
Congo. And
Yeah,
so like Africa is literally a haven for resources, and it's being robbed right now.
definitely, of course, yeah.
I
And
mean,
and
like,
what's the name? You go Camelot.
Oh, that wasn't me. That was Ron.
Oh, okay. Oh, you go
all
ahead, bro.
all I was going to say was, I didn't think that anything would top my story about everything that I learned in school about World War II was that there was a guy named Hitler and Captain America literally punched him in the face. But I think that tops it. Literally
Yeah.
everything I was taught about World War II is that there was a guy named Hitler and that Captain America punched him in the face. They literally taught us that there was literally a Captain America
Oh
that
gosh.
literally punched Hitler in the face. And then we won World War II. I didn't learn about fucking the Japanese campaign. I didn't learn about the Holocaust until no, that's not true. My dad told me about the Holocaust right after I started talking to him about World War II. We didn't learn anything about World War One.
In Alabama, I'm gonna we was taught that Moses wrote the Bible, no, wrote the Constitution. So I mean,
Whoa!
Moses, if he existed, was a man that lived like 3,000 years ago. That's what they said. Wrote the. I knew it was garbage, but that was in our textbooks. And I remember my teacher was like, "Yeah, that just we don't." I just skip over that, you know what I'm saying? Because like they had like a people who supposedly wrote the Constitution, and they had everybody, and then he had Moses. He's
I'm
like,
gonna
what the
put that on Twitter.
look that up. They still teaching that. They teach that in
shocked.
Texas. They teach
All
that
right,
in
hold up.
Texas
All right,
and
hold up.
Louisiana.
Hold up. I think Duende's been waiting to say something. What up, dude?
No, I literally just said I'm shocked. That's I guess I'm privileged in this. But I went to school in Colombia for a part of my life, and so the history that we were taught was from a native perspective. So we were taught that white folks came. We thought they were sick because they were very pale, and we tried to help them. They started killing us, and then I moved to Miami, and I was taught that Christopher Columbus came and like native people saw white folks as gods because they were in high horses. And I was like, wait, what? It
Yeah, I
was
was
just the
taught
complete
that too.
opposite. So when I went back home, I told my mom, hey, ma, like, this is what they're teaching me. I'm really confused because in Colombia, they taught me the opposite. And she just flat out told me, she's like, white people, they teach it, how they think. But we saw them as sick. They were pale. They were almost, they looked like ghosts to us. So,
Yeah, I think there was one of my favorite like history like comments or whatever was like when one of the I don't remember if he was from Spain or I don't remember if he was from Portugal or if he was from France or something like that. But like he wrote like in his diary like about like when he came over to the New World, he about how beautiful and like how fit, like it was basically like this romance novel of the indigenous people that were there, about how beautiful they were, and how all this shit, like how if they were ever brought back, how like they would no European woman would ever be able to be with like another European man again. Like it was like this whole fucking thing. So like for Duende to sit there and to talk about how like, yeah, they thought that they were sick looking. I can I think that's like funny. Like it's just like, oh yeah, no, that's confirmed. Like there was one white colonizer that did agree with you on that.
Yeah.
compared
No,
to the compared to the indigenous people, that they look soft as shit. Like, dude, I mean, oh, that's so funny.
You know what? Okay, I'll say one thing. Like, as I'm learning more about like just history in general and all of this stuff, and how the white man came and basically ruined everything. Okay, I'm sorry for the white people here listening and in this chat, but it's like I get so frustrated. I'm getting angry as I learn more and more. I'm like, you have so much history, so much culture, all of this, and then this other people just come in and destroy everything. And for what?
All the languages, we all speak English.
Yeah.
You know, we speak Spanish. People in America speak North America, they speak in Spanish and English. We didn't, and that is, you know what I'm saying? We you know, so crazy. The other crazy thing is that did y'all have one on colorism? I wanted to say this, right? I see this a lot about the colonization. Or people from Europe came here, you know, white people went to Africa, raped women, right? That brought out mezzitos, light skinned people, right? And then those people, their offspring, treat the indigenous people like crap, even though they're the same people, but they feel like they are superior to them. Like that's the kind of level. That's what colonization has done. Even though it's over with, it's still having a mind control over everywhere. Even in Africa, I seen that the biracial people in Africa, they are it's issues with that. It's like, don't y'all get this is just colonization, man. Why are we even concerned? Like, we victims of colonization. Why? Let's stop trying to victimize each other. You know what I'm saying? Why? If you go to Brazil, you go to Colombia, if you go to Mexico, it's white people living on the hill and everybody else living in shambles, man. That's happened in America too. We need to get together, man. Stop fighting each other with this colorism bullshit, man. It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will
Yeah.
admit.
Can
I'm gonna.
All right, hold on.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I'm sorry.
Hold on. Duende, Christopher, and then I think it was Saber.
No, I
My
talked about it.
apologies.
Y'all can go.
Well, no, you're the one who knows most about the situation on the ground. You can go first.
I was just gonna talk about like the comment that they brought up about like colorism in South America, because it depends on the community, and the caste system that happened over there with, like, you know, we had indigenas, and we had mestizos, zambos, like we had different, like I think I saw a photo that was like 36 different castes or 16, I don't remember the exact, but is this idea of like whitening your race that's so prevalent in like mestizo communities, and to me it's a little frustrating, it's annoying, because you have indigenous communities that are still trying so hard to keep the culture alive, the language is alive, but then we're like forced to learn Spanish to climb in society, and that's linguicide that happens a lot over there, and so you have this constant pressure of just becoming Spanish in Latin America, and that's what people are fighting to this day. So colorism within native communities looks a little different. It's not like people don't want to be white because there's this constant resistance to it, but outside of indigenous communities there's this big pressure to be white, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Christopher. You were going to say something.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to talk over you, Duende.
No, y'all good.
I was just trying. I wasn't saying for that reason. I was just trying to say so that everybody wasn't talking all at once. That's all.
Yeah, for sure.
I may be an anarchist, but that's.
Sure.
We still like structure a little bit.
No, I understand. I just didn't want to talk over anyone. That's all. Anyway, so yeah, like the thing is that like as a white person, I just feel like like I just feel that like I should try my hardest to like not like whenever there's a movement like an indigenous movement like the one in Ecuador. um um I feel like what we should do like is we should try to amplify like their movement and not try to like steal their movement, and not try to make their movement like not try to make their movement about us,
Yeah.
um and like the thing is that like because I feel like that's what a lot of white people tend to do is make their movements about them, and that especially a lot of white liberals and
So
anarchists. So
yeah,
and
so we can get to that a little bit later. I want Ron to finish up his thought, and then we can talk. I want to bring awareness to like what's going. I want to update everybody on what's going on in Haiti, and then we'll talk about like what it is to be an ally with these struggles.
okay.
So, two things. One, fists up for Rojava, if it's not too obnoxious to do that. And two, real brief thing. I don't think it's beneficial for us to pretend that poorly educating people is an accident. We need to acknowledge that that's being done deliberately to keep people separated, to keep them complacent.
Yeah,
It's
no,
deliberate.
and I totally 100% agree with. I never fault anybody for not knowing what's going on. Like the whole thing of, oh, my camera moved. The whole reason why they don't tell us shit once again is because if people know too much, that's bad for the system. So by no means do I ever fault anybody for not knowing anything. It's the people that refuse to learn what's going on that I have a problem with.
Yeah, I wasn't pointing fingers by any means.
Oh,
I was
yeah, yeah.
just,
Oh, okay.
I
My
wanted
bad.
to emphasize people are being miseducated on purpose, and that purpose is to keep people divided.
Oh, who did we lose? Oh, we lost
That's my
Small?
opinion. Yeah.
Oh, hopefully he comes
Bruh.
back.
I hope I didn't scare him off with my talk about
No. The StreamYard has been dropping people for some fucking reason.
No, he said he had to go.
He should be able to come back.
No, he said he had to go.
Oh, he did? Oh.
Yeah, in the private chat. All right.
Oh, shit. All right. Damn. All right. All right. So we'll talk about I'll read the article on Haiti. And then we can move on to the next subjects. All right. So as of right now, at least 2 people died and 14 police officers have been injured since last week, Thursday, as thousands of Haitian protesters filled the streets to protest against rampant inflation and demanding the resignation of President Jovenel Moise. I'm probably butchering that, on the 2-year anniversary of his inauguration. For 2 years, Jovenel has promised to fill our plates, but I can't eat lies. Protester Josue Luis Juane said in the capital of Port-au-Prince, banging a metal plate with a spoon. This president is nothing more than a liar, he said. He's got to go. As Haitians reel from a 15% inflation over the past 2 years, a sharp drop in the value of gourd, the national currency, against the U.S. dollar has only intensified price increases in mostly imported everyday essentials. We can't handle this economic slump anymore. We have no electricity, no security, and now flour and bread sellers have decided to close their doors due to inflation. We've started our new hunger riots, said Ulrich Lumia, leading the way at the protest. In Port-au-Prince, several vehicles were burned by protesters who also attempted to set a gas station on fire. Parts of the demonstration turned violent as some protesters clashed with the police, who used tear gas and several times shot live bullets into the air to disperse the crowd. National Police spokesman Gary Dossouar said the 14 officers injured were primarily hurt by people throwing stones. Last week, the Superior Court of Auditors published a report calling out more than a dozen former ministers and senior officials for poor economic management and the possible misappropriation of development funds loaned to the country from Venezuela since 2008. The report also named a company that was then headed by Moise as a beneficiary of funds from a road construction project that never had a signed contract. The demonstrations are calling for an end to the corruption state institutions come on another Haitian political anniversary. And then they got another one where it's basically talking about, the former French colony has been mired in political crisis since February 7th of 2019. This has left at least 7 people dead and everyday life in the largest towns paralyzed by protests and barricades. Demonstrators who mostly come from poor neighborhoods are demanding Moise's resignation over graft scandals and for failing to tackle widespread poverty. Each year, thousands of young people flee. Oh, wait, hold up. Haiti is the poorest country in the Americas and one of the poorest in the world, with 3/5 of the nearly 11 million population living below the national poverty line of $2 a day. According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs report, as of July 2018, some 1.3 million Haitians depend on food assistance. On January 2018, the country earned the unwanted distinction of being included in the United States President Trump's list of, quote, shithole countries. The poverty levels have been exacerbated by plummeting economic conditions in recent years. So misappropriated development funds, and it doesn't look like there's any end to the protests currently unless the president steps down. So that's what's going on in Haiti at the moment. So once again, you're looking at people living in poverty, finally having enough of the bullshit being lied to by their politicians, these neoliberal politicians, putting in place more austerity measures. They can't eat lies. That's true. There's a Lenin quote.
Could you link?
There are decades when nothing happens.
The private chat or even the main chat.
Oh yeah. My bad. Oh shit, my bad. I just like X'd them out. I'll get them to you in a minute. I'll look for them again when we start chatting.
Okay. Here's the thing on my end. Like, I follow a lot of different news organizations, and not just major news organizations. Like, I follow state and local papers, and I haven't heard anything about this either. Like, I haven't heard anything about anything going on in Haiti, and I haven't heard anything about anything going on in Ecuador, and that really unsettles me because I pride myself on being informed about the stuff going on in the world. So I want to know more about this.
Yeah. I mean, even Black Redguard did a video about it.
Yeah, he was probably the first person that drew my attention.
Oh God.
Oh, I'm not subscribed.
What was it? 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known otherwise.
If y'all aren't subscribed to Black Redguard in the chat, please do. He puts out amazing content. In fact, he's honestly, he's fucking great. I got no issues with the man. As far as what he says, I haven't met him in person.
Definitely a comment.
I'm sure we'll probably have some ideological differences. But hey, it is what it is.
No, I think he's one of my favorites. I would say, like, in terms of one of the people that stopped me from being a shithead anti-SJW, it was definitely him. I would say one of the top ones.
Black Redguard has convinced me to stop smoking marijuana.
He's gotten me close.
Oh, really? He's got you close.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I mean,
you gotta stay clean for the revolution.
No, definitely, yeah, definitely, yeah. But I think I still got some time.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if you want to like build a communist space, you shouldn't be using drugs. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, but I mean that's just his opinion.
No,
Uh,
no, no. I think it's definitely well. I would say in terms of the like just recreational sort of escapist type, yeah, yeah. But I think there's place for the ones that can definitely like expand your mind and even be used as medication in some ways as well. But
right.
that's a whole
Absolutely.
conversation, I'd say. Yeah.
Right. And I would not be shaming anyone who uses drugs at all.
Yeah, it's just that because I'd say in the video that he talked about in terms of like not using that kind of stuff, obviously on like he talked about um obviously the ones that are currently considered like illegal right now, but and then he also talked about the fact that in an ideal situation, none of them would be because it's just a way for the like people to oppress marginalized peoples that are using that in some sense as well. But like it's like okay, obviously if you imagine a world where those things are all decriminalized or legalized, then there would be no distinction between those ones in the sense where you have okay, legal here and illegal there. So we'd have to look at all of them to say okay, which ones can be used in the form of medicine, which ones can be used to hey help alleviate people from certain ailments in life, and then which ones would definitely just be detrimental all around, which should be avoided in that sense. So there's one of those things that would have to come in time, I would say, but there is a place for them. I would say you can't necessarily outright all of them because like one thing that I have been learning over the years is just the whole just how certain plant medicines has been used in indigenous communities as well to connect with like nature and that kind of stuff, and so that's definitely something that's very important.
Yeah, especially some of them are used to some of them are used for spiritual purposes. That's
Yeah, whether it's ayahuasca or iboga or whatever it is, like any of those. But
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't. That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
I guess like it's like one of those things where it's like I get asked by my coworkers and stuff. They're like, well, what about drinking? Or what about doing drugs? What about drinking and stuff like that? And I was just like, I mean, I don't know, man. That's not my priority right now. Like, can we figure that type of shit out later? Like, I really just want to overthrow capitalism. Can we just get that done first, and then we can worry about who's snorting what and who's boofing whatever drugs up their ass? It's a whole different topic.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily like interested in like throwing people in jail for
Oh yeah, absolutely
Yeah,
not.
that's the main thing for me. Like the last video that I made was just about the whole like a black market situation in London and how okay maybe you not necessarily want to use it for yourself, but it seems to be a means for the state to target black people especially and other marginalized people,
exactly.
that kind of stuff. And so it's
It's
like okay,
explicitly
yeah,
Oh
banned
yeah,
in the US. Yeah,
yeah,
I did a
literally, yeah,
whole video about
Yeah.
that.
definitely.
yes, you did. So yeah, so as you saw, so one of the reasons why I really wanted to bring up once again, just to reiterate the point for people who have just come in, the reason why I wanted to talk about Ecuador and why I wanted to talk about Haiti was because these are two active revolts by the lower class from the working class who are doing what they can to reestablish who is in power and to put themselves in a better spot of authority because they can't take it anymore. Enough is enough. And we in our Western societies have the privilege to look on these things, raise awareness for it, do our best to support and stand by these comrades in whatever way that we can. But we can also look at what their current struggle is now, because this isn't history. This isn't coming from an ancient tome about, Eastern European struggles. This is shit that's happening right now. And so we can look at that, we can be and take from it, this, we can learn from their sacrifices that are happening there, and we can work on our own revolution here. And so the more that we learn about this, the more that we hear about this, the more that the word spreads, the better we can enact our own, how do I want to put it? I guess revolution. Because everybody's is going to be different, but working together, that's the whole goal, right? And I think this is just me trying to lead us into the next topic, which is how to be an ally with marginalized groups, or how to, if you are part of an affiliate group, what your responsibility is when you show up to a protest just in solidarity with it. It might not be the thing that your particular group is fighting for 100%, but if it's something that jives with your overall goals, it's important for you to stand shoulder to shoulder with those people and show your support, and to be extra bodies on the line with them so that they aren't alone. And I would say number one is learning to listen to what is needed when you show up there. And, don't try to become the leader of what is happening. Because a lot of the times within these struggles, the people who are there have been working on this, have been planning this for months, if not years. And to just come in there and try to become like this savior of them, like, oh, I'm here now. I'm here now. I'm the hero of this story. That is not what an ally does.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure Ron, I know, has done a lot of activist on the ground activist work. I know Christopher Sabo has been part of groups in the past. Maybe he can touch on this. He's worked with Maoists or he's worked with MLMs before in the past. And me being new to the IWW just for like over a year and a half now, basically what I do is I just show up and I'm like, where do you need me? So, we all have different experiences in this, and I'm sure Duende has, seen it, his fair share of people fucking up and coming in there and trying to be the white savior. So, and Saber, I'm not sure what your background is, but, feel free to interject whenever you like. Take it away, guys.
I have stories. I can go on about that.
Yes, please.
I think the funniest one I'll say is I had this one, and it's not like he was new, right? To movements or anything like that. He just had this white savior complex, and he meant well, right? I always try to go about that. If someone means well, you know what? I'll excuse it. Who cares? They mean well. They're fighting with us. They're not against us. Like, to me, that's what's important. I have a lot of patience for that. But he'll say things like, I like my women, like I like my coffee, dark and strong, and he'll always talk to me about Seminoles and Miccosukee. I've told him 1,000 times, I'm not Seminole, I'm not Miccosukee, I'm Pihao, different tribe. And he'll be like, so what do Seminoles think about this? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm not Seminole, That's the type of person he is. But one day he got drunk and he called this Mexican girl an Indian, and then he called this black girl the N-word, hard ER, and he was drunk. And like, you know, he pushed one of the girls into a pool. It was this whole thing. And I was just there like, he gave me vibes.
So wait, this was like activist work or
An
something?
organizer, yeah, like an active organizer. He
What
was
the
a
whoa?
hardcore like leftist. He was a Marxist. And this was my first time in a like a Marxist space, right?
It's so bad.
So this was like one of the first people I met in this one organization in South Florida, and I was just like, huh, okay.
You can't see it, but my jaw is open. Like you can't. My jaw is like literally a game.
No, he wasn't a BuzzFeed reader. Like, he was a hardcore man. Like, he gave me
Let me
like.
apologize on behalf of the entire.
You don't gotta do that. Don't worry. It's
company.
just he does not represent anyone but himself. It's just. He was just interesting. It was just very interesting. And like my first interaction with him was actually I was giving a presentation, right, people on the environment, how governments affect indigenous communities, and I got a question from the audience. And the audience was like, "How do Native people deal with the depression, even though the government's constantly trying to put you guys down?" So I opened my mouth, and then some random dude in the audience interrupts me, talking about how he knows how we feel like because he's been to reservations and the drug addiction and the alcohol and all these things, right? And I just stayed quiet because he obviously had something to say, so I just let him blabber out. And then someone eventually told him, "Yo, can you shut up? You're not native. Like, what are you doing?" And then I just went on and like answered her question. That was my first interaction with him, right? And
Oh,
so yeah, I just after that I kind of just
So
excused it
these
and
are
we
all
moved
things
forward.
that you do not do. These are you are
never do
not an
that.
ally. You're not even a bad ally. You are just instantly just the fucking
Cancelled.
worst. Yeah, you are the
You're
fucking
like
worst.
working
I mean, he was
against your
racist.
cause.
He called us what? I'm sorry.
Oh, I said. I mean, like at that point, you're like working against your cause. I mean, if you're acting like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the group I was working with had to apologize to me and this one black girl because we're pretty much like the only people of color in the organization. So, they
That's the
apologized
worst.
to us. It didn't happen to me, so I was like, oh, it didn't happen to me. Like, you don't gotta apologize to me. Apologize to the Mexican girl that this guy offended, you know. But uh, I'm good. Like, I wasn't really friends with this dude. He just, he showed signs, but a lot of white folks have like kind of microaggressions. I don't have the energy to get mad at every microaggression. I just don't have that the energy to do that. So I kind of just let things go if it's not that big of a deal. But it is common, you know. And what can you do? You just
It's almost like they're just cosplaying as a revolutionary. It's like, yeah, they have the suit on, but they don't really feel it too much. And so obviously they're gonna let things slip every now and then. But
and he like dropped out of school after that. He went to somewhere like in Turkey or somewhere I don't know where, and he joined some army over there to kind of fight against capitalism.
Oh,
Uh,
so he probably joined the Kurd resistance.
Yeah, I think that's what something like that. That's the last I heard. Because literally, I,
Oh.
I haven't seen him since, and I was like, damn, did he just drop after this happened? Because the organization had to publicly apologize. It was this weird mess. But
Was that how he was going to get his clout? Wait, I have to get my clout back. I
it was
have to
like
go defend the Kurds.
the second act of the movie where he
I have to go be racist overseas.
gets to redeem himself.
Holy shit. So that was all examples of how to be a bad white ally. Ron or Chris, you guys want to take it on how to be a good one?
Okay, so Chris, do you have any advice? I mean, I do. I could go on for a while about it, but
You go ahead, Ron.
okay. Oh, all right. So, number one, the first thing in my experience.
Uh-oh.
Oh, did he freeze?
He froze.
I thought that was an
Oh,
epic
no.
pause. Oh my gosh.
just as he was starting to get somewhere.
He was about to start.
Oh,
For
shit.
what? Pause for dramatic.
Number one, this, and then just nothing.
I see their microphone moving though.
Oh no.
Oh wait,
I
no,
heard a bunch
just
of
kidding.
typing.
Oh no,
All right,
that was
well,
me. That was me.
all right, all right. Well, I guess Chris, like, what in the past, like, have you? So, what are your suggestions to working with other groups? As far as like in a real space, like working together, how that works.
Well, I mean, well, gee, a lot of pressure on me now. Because I've been trying to think of like what to do.
Oh, hey, Ron's back. You're saved.
Okay.
Sorry
Well,
about
okay. Well. I mean, I can think of more examples on how not to be a good ally, basically, and like so. Because like I remember being in an anarchist group where where we had a bunch of a bunch of white people and POC groups, and it was so divided between each other that like the POC folks like eventually had to like organize with each other, and they basically like they basically like had to like communicate with each other, and there was no organization between the white folks and the POC, uh, and and like it was like as if like it was basically like no communication at all, and it was basically kind of racist with each other, and um I don't know. Like it was very toxic actually, and so eventually the whole thing eventually crumbled. Whereas like when I eventually worked with the Marxist group, um, uh, it was basically called like serve your people, not serve your people. It was called serve the people, and it was based on like Maoist principles, and and there were some white people in there, and there were some anarchists in there, and it was like based on like it was based on this ideological idea of rash, red anarchist skinheads, and essentially it was based on kind of like unity in a sense. Uh, so uh, so basically like they would go door to door, and they would ask people's apartments like how the landlord treated them, and basically they would like get people to show up at like um at like meetings in the town square, so that way like they would like unite under like how to like create unions, like tenant unions for their uh, for their own apartment buildings and things like that. So so that's one thing that they did. And that was one way like how to be like a good white ally as well. So
So then I guess like what I would say is like what were the so if there were any disagreements with that group that you were a part of with the anarchists and the Maoists, like how were they rectified? Like how were they taken care of? Like were they, because I mean obviously there had to be at some point some disagreements. So like how were those disagreements handled within the group?
um well there were well with the Maoist group there was still a centralized government. There was, I mean, not a government, there was still centralization, like a centralized structure, but like people were still like anarchists were still allowed to be anarchists. So like
All right, so I see. So it was just kind of like
it was still a Maoist. It was still
yeah,
a
yeah.
Maoist like it was still like a Maoist like group.
Okay, all right, right on.
Yeah, I'm not part of it anymore, but
Yeah, I know. I
I
know
know who they
that.
are. I know
Yeah, I
who
know.
they are, and like I still respect them for who they are. You know.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
So welcome back, Ron.
that's why I'm not a Maoist anymore.
Welcome back, Ron.
Thank you.
So you stopped. You left at step one. Uh,
I can't believe that happened. I'm so sorry. Just my internet cut out. Um, what I was going to say is that the most important thing when you're dealing not just with oppressed peoples, but with any person, and frequently the thing that people tell me when they get comfortable with me being around is that other people need to understand, especially people who come in to help, that they are people too. They aren't like political objects. They aren't pawns. They're people who have problems, and those problems are compounded by systemic injustices. But they're people with flaws and good traits and all kinds of fucking issues. They aren't characters in a story, I guess, is
Yeah.
The way I would put it. The people that you're trying to help are not people. Like if you're talking about the white savior complex, that's what was it. Was it Josh? Josh was. He hit it right on the nail in the head. These people think that they are the protagonists of their own story, and if
Oh, you're
that's
talking
how,
about me? Oh, yeah, that was
yeah,
me. Yeah.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
incredibly insightful. That's I talked to some of these obnoxious fucking people too, and that's how they view things. And you've got to get that out of your head.
Yeah. I think what ends up happening a lot of times, when it comes to, and this isn't just, it's really hard for established groups that have been doing a thing for a really long time, like groups that have been really active in a certain community, that when there are other groups that start collectivizing and doing things together without knowing about, the other, the okay, let's say that there's a group of activists, or let's say there's a group of anarchists, right? Like straight up black bloc, um, real video game shit, anarchists, anarchist group. Okay, then you have, the IWW, and then you have like you have a Maoist or a Marxist group, or you have the DSA coming in, and then you have like a more liberal group that's more for like immigration rights and stuff like that, right? And let's say that the DSA and the immigrant group are coordinating a demonstration in front of the ICE building, right? Now
As they should.
the Black Bloc anarchist group has been doing shit like, as far as like banner drops and uh, mild physical disruptions in that area, so that make it more difficult for uh, the DHS or ICE to actually operate like in their space, right? And all of a sudden, and then the IWW comes in there, and they send members in to go help coordinate action in front of, with the DSA and with the migrant or the immigration group. And all of a sudden, the Black Bloc anarchists start getting pissed because they feel like they're being left out. Which, I mean, it sounds really petty, but I've seen that happen. Not that exact situation, but as far as like different groups who kind of see it as like, hey, we've been doing this for a while. How come you guys haven't reached out to us? And a lot of the times it just comes down to people not knowing. I mean, it's very as hard, as difficult as it is for leftists on the internet to work together. It's almost just as hard for leftists in the real world to work together, because we have to be so secretive. We have to be so we can't talk about it as openly as we would like to. And a lot of that happens also because like we don't have physical bases of operation that are safe for us to meet in. And I mean, honestly, like that's kind of like a good moment for me to plug ColorTube, but because that's kind of what we want to do with that. But as it stands now, there's no actual thing that allows these organizations to work with one another, aside from there being one massive movement or one massive demonstration where different representatives can meet up in that one instance to discuss things. And if you are ever put in that situation where you have to meet with another activist or another or another representative from an activist group or from somebody's coordinating committee, if they aren't necessarily, if they're like more liberal, if they're not super hard to the left, you can, like, basically your best bet is to once again listen, hear what their plans are, take note of it, and if you have the quote unquote authority, or if you have the means to like pull the trigger on doing something, of coordinating an action with those groups, then by all means do it and to try to achieve your goals together. But if you don't have that authority, communicate it to your group, because it is very hard to not step on somebody else's toes. Like if they were like, let's say that there's a group that was planning to do like a die-in where they had like 35 people set up to go into a governor's office or whatever and just drop dead, and just sit and just lay there. But then all of a sudden, like that coordination is kind of like showed up or is not deemed as big of an issue because they're doing a picket march across the street from the building. Understand? And it just seems like, and then it allows the news media to come in and be like, look at these leftists. They're unorganized. They don't know what they're doing and blah, blah, blah. And then it just perpetuates this whole thing of like how, we don't work together. We don't have these things. So as we all get more, active in our communities, these are things to be cognizant of.
Absolutely. Anarchist tech support. Do I sound a little better? I tried to turn the gain up on my mic. Is it better or is it significantly worse? I couldn't tell which way was up and down.
I think you sound a little bit better now.
I have headphones, so I can hear everybody just fine. I gotta check my headset privilege.
I have headphones too, but
Duende, have you run into anything like that, or like where like other groups have shown up to a demonstration of yours and like tried taking over, or have just done their own thing, like, and not coordinate with you, like complicate the action you're trying to do?
I've got an opposition, if that counts.
Really?
So I'm one of the founders for Indigenous Peoples Movement, and we had a huge march in Washington D.C. And I don't know if you guys saw, but it got mainstream. This movement wasn't mainstream at first, but it got mainstream after the encounter with this. I believe he was Omaha. Uncle Nate. He was drumming. Yeah. He was doing a closing ceremony, and like these Catholic children were confronting him while he was doing a closing ceremony. And liberals saw an opportunity to basically say, "Yo, look what Trump supporters are doing to Native Americans." So they actually started reporting on the march because of that. So yeah, we had like Catholic protesters because there was another protest that they were having.
Yeah, I remember that. Wait.
Was that the guy with the MAGA hat just standing there, like the little teen guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we organized that march, right? We got Native people from North to South America come. We even got Native people from Asia and Australia coming to joining us for that march, and we raised like $15,000 before it got mainstream. Only small local news stations were reporting it, and then that happened, and boom, it was honestly a blessing in disguise because we got like $60K plus $1,000 in donations, and we used a lot of money to kind of pay for the lawyer fees because that child was trying to sue the elder that was with us. And so yeah, so I have got an opposition, and it's funny because we had videos of those children before saying, "Hey, look, a bunch of Indians are protesting. Let's go bother them," So
I remember seeing that and really wishing that, like, oh god, that was fucking awful.
Yeah, I remember seeing a bunch of the reactionaries say, "Look at this guy just standing there," and all these people getting mad at him just because he's standing there with MAGA hat on. Blah blah blah. What happened to freedom of speech? I just thought, you know what? Maybe okay, yeah. I don't. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy that you're actually part of the people that organize that. Man, congrats on that whole thing. That brought a lot of attention to some big issues that needed to be talked about.
Again, our movements are rarely it's something that Native people fight all the time is invisibility here in the Americas. I don't know about elsewhere, but at least here in the Americas, definitely invisibility. We have movements, Standing Rock as well. Like Standing Rock didn't become mainstream until a lot later. Once not a lot of non-natives started appearing to Standing Rock, that's when it started getting a big traction. You know, we started getting
Yeah.
celebrities, and we got a lot of hippies, and hippies come to our movements, our marches all the time, and it's so bad that the Lakota tribe had to uh, uh um yeah, they had to basically do training throughout the country how to be a good relative, how do non-natives protest with us, because what
Yeah.
ends up happening a lot of times is that they come to our marches, they disrespect us, they litter, and then we have to pick up after them, you know.
Yeah,
And
I've heard
we're
about
talking
that.
Mm,
about
It's
like environmental
shameful.
issues that a lot of times we fight for, and we're still having to pick up after these people, you know.
Oh,
So yeah, it's just
I
what it
just
is.
made a video recently about what decolonization means.
yeah, that's a great video.
Thank you, thank you. I feel it was a little too short though, but I tried to talk about everything that like I knew what decolonization meant. Um, and I mean, like because I've talked to like quite a few decolonial activists. Um, and like from like from like a different perspectives. Like some most from what I from like what I've heard is like most from I'm sorry, most of the
It's all right.
from mostly it's like people they just want to they just want to like preserve the environment, and they want to actually reconstruct the environment, and they want to have the environment like basically like preserved the way it was for the most part. Isn't that what decolonization basically is to an extent? Like they want to have like social ecology, like they want to maintain social ecology, like basically
Who's they?
like the indigenous people, and like decolonization activists and stuff like that.
Decolonization, I can't speak for everyone, right? So let me just put that out there. I can only speak for myself. So decolonization for me can mean a lot of things. For me specifically, is going back to how my community does things without a colonial influence on it, whether that be traditional medicine, language, view on gender and sexuality. Decolonization can encompass all these things. Decolonization for Native people in general tends to be something like that. So when we look at the environment, our relationship with the environment, whether it's be Pachamama or Mother Earth or however other indigenous communities refer to Mother Earth. It's like there has to be a form of respect, and that's something that we try to teach. My mom talks about how like white folks got disconnected from Mother Earth a long time ago because at one point they were in tribal communities that respected her, but now they're so disconnected because they only see money when they walk, every like money, right? And so it is.
Yeah,
She tells me
commodification
to
of
kind of
everything.
like teach them to like reconnect to the earth, because if you see capital, if you look at a leaf and you see capital, I am personally, your philosophy and my philosophy differ, you know what I mean? So decolonization for me would be like just going back to a more communal way of life, more how my ancestors did things, um you know.
So yes.
Yeah, I agree with that philosophy. Like, I mean, like, I basically, um, when I think of decolonization, I think of preserving like an ecological society in which like we need to we need to preserve we need to preserve not just we need to well not just preserve like the environment, but also we need to make a society that preserve that respects society. I mean, I'm sorry, that respects the environment, and I think a part of that, goes into recreating our culture, and I think I think the what you just described, could be a part of that. You know,
I
so
think it goes a lot deeper than that as well. Like for me personally, when I think about decolonization, right, well, I think back to before like the slave trade began and how um all of the things that all of the problems that we have now in terms of the African continent that also have to do with the global economies as well. Let's say, okay, I'll give one concrete example would be the tech industry, right? You have uh, $1 trillion tech industry now. You have like Microsoft, Apple, and all this kind of stuff.
You
But
have individual tech companies that are worth $1 trillion.
exactly, yeah, yeah, yeah. But the issue is the like, that is predicated on certain minerals that come from places like Congo and all of this kind of stuff, and those minerals have been exploited in such a way that the continent itself is rich, but the people there are still poor. And that's something that has to definitely change. And that would require a fundamental shift in the way the global economy works, because let's say you want to pay people their fair share, that would affect the prices of tech in in the entire world, for example. And so it's all about, in that context, thinking about how Western countries still have an influence on countries in Africa, and in one sense, and then in another sense, you'd say, well, the countries themselves are the product of Western countries carving up countries in Africa to divvy up land for themselves. Whereas before that, Africa was just a place. It wasn't even called Africa, it was just a place. There was no Nigeria, there was no this. And so let's say you have a country like Nigeria, for example, the cultures, like there is like dozens, if not hundreds of languages in that specific area. But when people think of Nigeria, they think of a specific location on the planet. But let's say you have the border of Nigeria, there's still people on the other side of that border that may have been a part of that same tribe like 100 or a couple of 100 years ago. And so it goes way deeper than just observe, like, preserving the environment. It's all about restoring where people were beforehand, but not necessarily going back in a sort of technological sense. It's all about restoring the rights to the people that were already there and respecting and in some sense, uh, uh, let's say, contributing to the global economy in a way that doesn't exploit each other. I would say that's it in a nutshell for me personally.
Honestly, I think that essential reading for people in my if people are like for people who like theory or like books, I guess some essential reading is is it the Settlers? Is that what it's called, or the Settler? Saber? You
Yeah,
might know what I'm talking about.
I
Yeah.
haven't read that book, but it's in my watch list. I definitely know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But
it's
yeah,
called The Settler.
yeah, and then the other one is oh fuck. Uh, Let me hold on. I have it on my phone. 2 seconds. Blah, blah, blah.
I'm looking it
One,
up and I'm finding a video
Open.
game.
I'll send it to you. Open Veins of Latin America is another book, and in that book, like the author talks. It's basically about the 5 centuries of rape of Mexico, Central and South America, up, and but he also kind of touches base and correlates a lot of like what happened in Central and South America is like what is also happening in contemporary Africa as well. And basically, like everything that you brought up, Saber, as far as like tribes being separated by arbitrary borders that they didn't necessarily establish themselves, I'm sure like Duende can even see a lot of parallels in that with the different pueblos from South America.
I don't
I
even
know.
gotta go
I know.
to South
I'm
America.
sorry.
I can literally talk in the United States. Like my mentor, she's Apache, she's Inde, and the Apache tribe is separated by a border. So their national conference is actually in Chihuahua, Mexico, because uh, uh, half of the community cannot migrate to the United States to join within the reservation there because it's past the border. So the community members uh, um, in Texas have to go to Mexico just to reunite with their other tribal folks.
Yeah. I saw uh something on the news. Like this was before I really got deep into like leftist ideologies and stuff, and I was just thinking to myself how crazy it is that these people have to go through such length just to reunite with people on the other side of a border that people are trying so hard to put walls up in between. It's like, do you have any idea what it would be like? Let's say you have a neighbor, or let's say you have a family that are in a specific town in America, right? And that it's just literally cut in half, and you're expected to go around so many borders just to reunite with those people. It's something that I really don't think people necessarily uh, empathize with enough, unless they've experienced it, unless they've experienced separation on that level, unless their ancestors have. And that's another thing that I think the sort of the the sort of hegemony of whiteness, I'd say, doesn't or hasn't really experienced in recent times, and that's something that has to change as well, I would say.
Yeah, it's just all these things that people just have this preconceived notion that happened hundreds of years ago, and it's not. It's fucking yesterday.
Yeah.
Like it's this shit is happening now, and
Majority of the detention centers right now in the U.S. border are affecting the Maya communities in Guatemala, because the United States' role in displacing the people there. They're forced to migrate, and I talked about this before a lot
yeah,
actually, but about how literally the six, I believe 6 or 7 children that have died in ICE have all been from Maya communities. But that's not how it's reported, right? Because people don't want to
Yeah.
associate migration with native people, right? They want to continue foreignizing the issue so that the average American doesn't care. But if you look
yeah,
at the border, if you look at ICE, it's predominantly affecting indigenous communities. If you go to the detention center in Arizona, 30% of the inmates there don't even speak Spanish. They just speak an indigenous language. And then we don't even know how many of those folks are bilingual. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So the ICE detention centers are always looking for translators because they assume that everyone speaks Spanish south of the border, and that's just not the case. There's Nahua, Cachiquel, etc. And so uh, when we talk about borders, it's was not drawn from us. So obviously you're gonna have communities who were separated by it, and you see that in here in Colombia too. The Guayu Nation is a border tribe from Venezuela and Colombia.
It's fucking yeah. It's fucking exhausting.
It's
Um,
shameful.
like trying to fit like wrapping your head around the shit like this. Like when I was writing my video on a quick call to action for migrant rights, like learning about what you had said, uh, that indigenous people are migrating to the United States, and then ICE will take advantage of the fact that they don't speak Spanish and that they don't speak English, and they'll take their kids away from them, send them back to the country that they fled from, possibly to be fucking murdered, and they have to try to start everything all over again. And then, but they like their children, they essentially forcibly orphan those children because they don't have a way to get back to their parents, because as we stated earlier on in this stream, like if you don't have a phone line to even vote for your fucking president, how are you gonna establish, where your address is? How are you gonna make a connection to an ICE website, to meet with a lawyer, to get to an attorney, to get a hold of your child again, when you're just being told in broken Spanish, or whatever, like sign this paper and this will expedite your process, and then you never, those children will never see their parents again, and those parents will never see their kids again, and it's all because of these misconceptions that that Duende just spoke on. And it's like, to me, it I don't have words to process the amount of anger that I feel.
It's like a life sentence, basically.
So
That's what it seems like to me, and it's unjustified.
Very,
and
very much so.
and I, it's like one of these things too, where it's just like, every time somebody says like, I will still warrant the fact that most people most people who live in privilege in the United States and in Canada and in Europe, y'all don't face that level. I mean, I don't face that level of scrutiny. Like nobody's trying to take my kid away from me yet. Yet. But there's you know from that perspective, there's still time to negotiate. There's still time to go about things in a peaceful manner, if you will. But there are a lot more people that are being ignored, that when they decide to finally push back, it shouldn't be a surprise to you
Yeah.
that these people have become, violent, that these people have done something that upsets your sensibilities living in your safe little bubble. Because this is like, you can never understand like what that feeling of alienation and isolation is. I don't think any of us can, really.
I'd say one other thing in terms of just being a good ally is just to acknowledge that, okay, when it comes to all of these issues, right, a lot of people would approach it in the sense that, okay, we have to, like you said, but like we've been saying before, it's sort of like a savior complex. But in terms of why, it's almost as if they would see, even on a subconscious level, some kind of uh, inferiority to those people, to the point where they've gotten themselves to that place, and now we have to kind of help them back up. But it's like, you have to realize that it's their own, it's the sort of the whole top down culture that's um sort of perpetrating these atrocities. Like it's all very systemic. And so when it comes to being a good ally, one thing that could help a lot is just to check your own people, in the sense that it's just like to sort of how would you say, to, instead of trying to co-opt uh, a, a an indigenous movement in some sense, like these people are strong enough, like as we've been talking about in Haiti and in the Ecuador. And even if you look at historical times like the Black Panthers, you look at these revolutionaries, you hear them speak. These people they're not weak in any sense. They're probably the most strongest people you can meet, but they are met with such a big state presence that it's almost impossible to overcome that, because there's so much money behind it, there's so much technology behind it. And like it's one of those situations where people don't really listen, even as when they were saying before, they don't really pay attention to it until there's like it involves a white person somewhere, or it gets a headline somewhere. I guess the perfect example in today's age is the whole Greta situation. Like indigenous people have been, and African people have been talking about climate situations for the longest time, and then you get this little white 16-year-old or however old she is talking about it, and now it's a global issue, and now it's a big issue. And so it's something to be said that people just need to be heard. They just need to uh, be amplified in a way that it's just a default for like the white culture in some sense. So that's also one thing that can be addressed too, I think.
I do appreciate the constant reminder that indigenous folks are not weak. I don't know what is this idea. I meet a lot of people saying they feel bad. It's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. Like you guys are XYZ. You guys are uneducated, and like I people come up to me and they'll be like, you guys are like helpless and things like that, and I'm just like, my grandma would have shot you if you walked in around, like flat out, like if you trespass, you would have gotten shot. So what is this idea? I don't know where this idea comes from, that we're weak, that we're dying. Like we are being oppressed by the states, but we're fighting. It's not like we're just sitting there letting it happen. Like, oh no, what are we gonna do now? Like we fight.
You like that's the thing that like that's one of the reasons why I want to like and if Fatnum were here he would probably be like wagging his finger at me telling me to like not to put so much credence in this, but that's one of the reasons why I feel like it's also important for us to learn about like the Zapatista movement is because like they showed that you don't have to like you can change shit, like you don't have to like like it's just the numbers, it's just forming coming together and trying to reach the same goal. That's all you need. You just need people to like work together with you. You don't trying to like show people that like people who literally live in the mountains, whose families have been oppressed for centuries, they constantly fight back, and they were able to make tangible change within their lives, and that it benefits like not just themselves but the world. Like the fact that the resources and the forests that exist in Central America, like within the Chiapas territory, like they've been defended and protected because of those movements. But like meanwhile, I can't even get people at a fucking grocery store to unionize because they don't see what good that will do.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's just like it like the mindset is so fucking different where it's just like, well, how are we going to do that? It seems too hard. And it's like,
Um,
wow, what? The
My
fucking, are you
sister
kidding me?
unironically says
well,
that about every little thing.
well, the way you do that is, well, I remember Black Red Guard was talking about how like you need to do like a class analysis on like the people, and if you want to unionize, like for example, a grocery store, you need to do a class analysis on the grocery store. Like for example, you need to ask them questions on how the grocery store is treating them, and you need to, like for example, like evoke an emotional response from the
Well, yeah.
grocery.
No, I understand all that, but it's just still. I actually get a lot of. I actually get a lot of people who are from, um, like I get a lot of coworkers aren't from who aren't white. Like all my non-white coworkers are the ones who are predominantly uh, against it because they have so much to lose. And it's like I understand that. I get that. Believe me, I understand. Like y'all got bills to fucking pay. Like I always say that, and it's just can I just count on your support when it happens? And that I'm got most of my people at that stage where they're just like, yeah, definitely. So, but aside
That's
from
something.
my personal shit or whatever, my broader point is that in Western countries where we have the abundance of tools, the amount of shit for communication and organizing, the ability to fucking do everything that we're doing right now in real time, and people still have the audacity to just say, well, how are we going to do this? Like how are we going to how are we supposed to, how like we're so helpless, and it's like, you're not, but then in the same breath, oh, sorry, go ahead. I'm just
I
ranting, so go ahead.
I go out and I talk to. Speaking in my capacity as someone who goes out and talks to people a lot, there are some. Um, we have to remember, like education, people aren't taught about how labor movements worked in the past, which means they weren't taught about the effectivity of labor movements in the past. And also, like, I don't know where you live, so I can't speak to your experiences, but I know people here in Springfield who have lost their jobs for even entertaining the notion of forming a fucking union. I know people. Fucking Walmart has a blanket policy, I'm to understand, where if they find anyone, if someone even says the word union, they're fired on the spot. I was talking about this yesterday on Twitter about how like people in the fast food industry seem to be the only people who are in a position to form unions like that to fight for their labor, because everyone else is just getting screwed way too hard. And there's another thing, a completely unrelated thing. I was thinking about you were asking how to be a good ally, and something occurred to me. One of the most important things you can do, and I see this problem a lot, and I don't see it remedied a lot. You were talking about how there aren't a whole lot of safe places for people on the left to assemble and to gather. You can remedy that. You can remedy that easily, and not just by like I've let people stay. I have like a bed and a shower and a toilet, but I've let people stay in my area into my apartment if they if they absolutely need to. And I've stayed when I was in DC. I stayed with like 4 different people when I was in DC. And if you can't do that, and that's there are people that can't do that, if you want to help with that specific issue, you can go out and you can find businesses, you can find churches and like restaurants and stuff who will be sympathetic to the things that you're doing and aren't going to rat you out to the cops. Look for unions, look for union buildings. They're generally very sympathetic. There's a carpenters union very close to where I live, where groups like Indivisible and well, I know Indivisible goes there a lot, and there are other groups that go there too that I can't think of off the top of my head. That's where I went to watch the Democratic debates, the first Democratic debates actually. That's a very specific problem, and it's a very real problem. But that's something that you can remedy yourself by either being the solution to that problem or going out and finding a solution to the problem. And it's not just about assembling. Like, people get kicked out of their houses, people get kicked out of their apartments all the time. I'm a mod on a lot of leftist Discord servers, and like just a dozen times this year alone, we've had people, especially trans people, who've been kicked out of their houses and haven't had anywhere to live. They've had to live on the street for a couple of days or a couple of weeks. And, like, just if you have a couch to crash on, people generally speaking aren't that scary. I mean, I know I look like a big scary guy, but
Same.
that's
yeah,
a very real problem, and that's something that we need to work on.
Yeah, I honestly, that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm pushing so hard for my chapter of the IWW to establish a. We don't have a union hall. Like, we don't have a building, and it's very hard to coordinate things without a physical space. Like, we end up having to use libraries. We use student unions, like on college campuses. You know, so that's like. Me and a couple other comrades were working on that right now, but that's one of the things is like being able to open it up to people who are in need, like for those reasons, because you never know when a supporter, a worker, you know, their family, if we can have like a separate bed in place so that they could get on their feet and then get back out there, that's important. And you know, yeah, it's honestly, Ron, I couldn't have said it better. Like, that's awesome. I guess what I would say is if you are part of a union and you don't have a union hall, that's one of the big, like what Ron just explained is one of the biggest reasons why you need one.
Well, I mean, I have nothing. I literally have nothing. I don't have comrades. I don't have a union hall. I don't have anything.
We're your comrades, homie. I keep telling you that. I keep telling you that. This is why, you know,
if I were in California, I'd have you living with me.
Same. If you know, I don't want to like.
Sorry.
I keep wanting to plug. All these things keep leading up to ColorTube, You know what I'm saying? And that it's about organizing this, allowing people who don't have access, who live in areas where it's like all you have is an internet connection, but allowing you and to be empowered to contribute in a real way to meeting an end to our struggle, you know? And as soon as we can pin down a date where that works with most people's lives, as far as like because like with the people that were initially on board with this, we will vote on a constitution, and everybody who's here, I want to be witness to this so that we can organize this effectively, because this is going
Glad
to
you've
be
got to.
like, if this works, if we it's going to work if we can all work on it together. But it will allow people like Christopher Sabo, who obviously has the drive, the dedication to do these things, and who wants to do these things but in a more physical sense, to be able to send resources their way to fucking do it. And you know, it just needs to, it's, I really, it bothers me that I feel like we're dragging our feet on this, but this is something that's coming down the line that, you know, I want everybody to just be cognizant of, that this is something that is coming very shortly. And if you are about, you know, fixing the problems and doing the work that must be done, then this is something that I can guarantee you will help us all achieve those goals.
Can I just, a little thing that the people in Indivisible will do sometimes is, like, they know a lot of local restaurants, not chain restaurants, but like local restaurants, local pizza places, and like there's a pizza place that they'll go to, and they'll get like $100 worth of stuff, and they'll have a meeting there, and the people who own that little restaurant are fine with it because they know that they're going to get that business. If you can find a little business place like that where you can get together and you can tell the people, hey, we're going to come in here like once a month or once every couple of weeks, and there's going to be money in it for you, that's going to be a pretty safe place to go, because like it doesn't get remarked upon a lot, but those little places, they get squeezed a lot by the same people that we're trying to screw around with.
So like basically like what you're saying is it's like if you're saying like a big meeting of people with like $100, like you're saying like if like everyone buys
$100
something,
buys a lot of pizza. Yeah.
like round tables basically.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
I mean, that
it
makes
doesn't
sense.
even need to be like $100. You can get a lot of pizza for like $20.
Yeah. And honestly, too, like, if
And if they're
you,
sympathetic, it's even better. They might give you a discount.
I mean, but here's the thing, too. Meeting a lot of libraries actually have,
Libraries too are great places.
yeah,
Although-
libraries a lot of the times do have like meeting like rooms in them, and they're free. You just got to get on a block. Like, you just got to get like on like a time. Like, usually you can only rent. I say rent, but you don't pay anything for it. You usually have to get it within a like an hour time frame, right? So, but it's just getting people to that spot, to that space. And and honestly, like, for somebody, and I'm going to say this say this to you right now, Christopher, just because there might be somebody in chat that's listening to this that might be in a similar situation as you. You can, if you can get the propaganda out there to in an area that's around where you want to meet at, and then meet there, even if it's like 2 or 3 people that you can coordinate with, that's still something. You know what I'm saying? Even if 2 or 3 people just show up, you guys can like sit there, talk, meet, as like figure out like where your ideologies lie, figure out what goals you want, figure out, make a plan of action. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
then because you yourself are a content creator and you know how to make propaganda and you know how to talk to people, like you can also send them this way. And then, once again, you can put them in the Discord, and then we can work with you guys then as far as like doing what we can to send you help, send you, some sort of thing to help you out, and because overall, like that's what it is. It's these small actions where one person becomes three people becomes seven, and it just like multiplies that way.
Just a
and
second.
yeah, no problem.
I understand what you're trying to say. That makes sense. I can probably try at like my local college or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been out of town for like a week, so it's been really hard for me to do a whole lot of anything. I've got a lot of people asking me about like paperwork and stuff like that. Like as far as like agitprop goes, I will do my best to get that in there. Comedian WW, if you're still in here, can you post a link into the chat for the Color Tube Discord so people can join if they have any questions?
Yeah, I'm not even in that, so that'll be cool to join that.
Yeah. And then yeah. So I kind of want to wrap everything up. We've been going at this for a little bit over 2 hours. I know Ron probably went to go take a leak, so we can let him kind of finish it off. We can go on the line here. Saber, you got you want to plug your stuff, or do you have any last thoughts?
Yeah. Last thoughts. Obviously, this was a great stream. It was good to talk to you guys and discuss what we can. Well, just obviously, first of all, discuss the movements that are going on in Haiti and Ecuador as well. Obviously, we've got to support those people. But yeah, in terms of my own stuff, my channel name is the same as it is here. Basically, you can find me anywhere and on Twitter as well. Basically, post leftist content, but mainly, well, over the past 2 videos, I'd say focusing on like gang culture in London, and I'm more or less trying to get to the systemic issues because I've noticed that obviously you're gonna hear people talking about it and on the one hand, but then in terms of like breadtube or leftube, you have people talking about mainly like current events and that kind of thing. But I haven't really seen anyone talk about like gang culture in London from a sort of anti-capitalist perspective and how that can actually fuel all of a lot of the violence that's going on. So that's basically what I've spent the past few videos doing. So if anyone wants to check that out, feel free. I plan on doing a lot more in terms of that, but also delving into like Black history and certain revolutionaries throughout history, as well as talking about technology and what technologies can be useful to aid a revolution in the future, which involves like cryptocurrencies and that kind of stuff. So yeah. Anyone wants to come over and subscribe, hit me up, do whatever, go ahead. Thank you.
I
already
did before.
subscribed.
Same. Yeah, but in chat, everybody go subscribe to Saber, please. And everybody who's watching this in the future, please subscribe to Saber. Terribly undersubbed, does great content. And is able to do these streams now on a stable internet connection. So that's pretty baller.
Finally.
One thing too, one stream of UNIDOS coming up, which I might invite you on, is how to relate or how to disseminate and talk about leftist ideology within gangs of marginalized groups, because I feel like it's like they are also a group, like most of the people who are in gangs are oppressed, and they're there because of the situation, because of the systemic situation that they're put into.
Yeah,
So
and the problem is a lot of them don't know the systemic issues around it. They just think it's all localized and it's all about postcode wars, or in that sense will be zip code wars in America or whatever. But yeah, I definitely need to work on a way to first of all educate myself to be able to articulate to them why it's not, we shouldn't be fighting each other and we should be looking at the system
well,
itself.
I tell you what, you come up with some ideas, and I'll work on finding more people that also know about this shit. And then, once again, it'll just be like this, where we all talk about it, we all coordinate, we all work together. That's what this all is. Christopher Sabo. Oh, go ahead, Dwanda.
Ironically, both my parents were in American gangs when they migrated here. and my grandparents had when they brought their kids, uh, the way my parents survived was by joining gangs. They were it actually in California. 18th Street was the gang my dad was part of. He got deported eventually, but yeah.
Yeah.
Duende, you're just part of. You just got a little bit of everything, don't you?
No, it's just like I have a particular I have a particular life story, I guess. I had a good life, like growing up, even though like growing back like in Colombia when I grew up, I did have it's not like I had a house or anything like that. We had like no roof, right? But I didn't know that, It's not like I like when I would sweep rain out of the house, it's not like I was like I had anything to compare it to until I migrated to the United States. And I was just like, "Oh shit, we were poor." You know what I mean? And then we got like air conditioning, and I was like, "Oh shit, we're rich now. We have air conditioning." Just little things like that. So I do have a particular life experience, but for someone with that particular life experience, I think I grew up very privileged. Because I'm in college now, and I'm the first one in my family to go to college. My family didn't go to middle school, high school. Like I'm the first one to go to school. So it's like a big jump in life quality. You know. So I think I'm lucky. But I
Nice.
do have a particular life experience. Both my parents went to prison. They got deported. That's why I was in Colombia to begin with. Um, you know, shit happens.
Oh, the worst shit. Christopher, you wanna any last thoughts,
Um,
or you just want to plug?
well, I mean, we should definitely be thinking critically uh, about how we can combat colonial powers, not only in South America, but also in the global North. Um, and we should definitely keep thinking about how we can decolonize um, uh, the imperialist powers and in every way, shape, and form. Um, I definitely learned a little bit today from Duende. Actually, thank you so much for opening the discussion uh, a little bit further about decolonization a little bit further. I actually learned a little bit from you, so thank you for that. Um, anyway, so uh, my channel would be anyway. Oh, um, my channel would be my Christopher Sabo, and then my channel, my Twitter would be Chris Sabo Show. So you can check me out on there.
Um, can I
Uh,
jump in or?
yeah. Well, hold on, Duende. When you get a chance, check the private chat and Streamyard.
Oh wait, hold on. Okay.
All right, cool. So I think he was saying okay to you, Ron. Okay. All right. Yeah. One day you wanna. I know you don't have a YouTube channel, but if you, as always, if you wanna plug your organization and
Yeah. So I mean, eventually I will make a YouTube channel. I'm in the works, but it's not really gonna be about leftist theory, or anything like that. So I'm sorry. I'm not really well versed. I'm the first one to say that. I'm sorry. Like I'm a STEM major, so I don't read in school, and I will eventually once I graduate. I'll start reading more theory, because I do feel kind of bad because like everyone around me is like, oh,
You don't need to
Marxism and
know a whole lot of theory.
Emiliano Zapata did not read Marx
I
before he
I
went and
but
fucking.
the thing is that I meet such I'm privileged to like have met such amazing organizers in South Florida, and they tell me like that they've become better organizers through reading theory, and so I kind
Okay, I
of look up
guess.
to it. I
Yeah,
was just
that's
like, and
fine.
so I'm kind of looking
Yeah.
forward to
All right.
how reading will kind of help me grow as a person, because I don't know, I just want to be a well-rounded person and continue growing. That being
Okay.
said, my Twitter is Neoputa. I talk a lot about indigenous issues. I try to make a lot of jokes. I tend to not take things seriously a lot, just because life is depressing. Medicine, humor is medicine. My family, they joke about, they drag each other all the time. My mom will drag me daily You know, that's kind of how we grow. You know, that's how we like avoid depression and like we don't kill ourselves. You know, we just drive. So yeah, it's
That's not.
Neoputa.
Uh,
And the organization that I'm very active in my organization is Indigenous Peoples Movement. Check us up on Instagram, Twitter. I don't even handle the Twitter just because the Indigenous Peoples Movement Twitter just because I don't know. Twitter's a new thing for me, and yeah. So Indigenous Peoples Movement on Instagram, Neoputa on Twitter. I'm really active in both those.
Is that NIO then space then PUTA?
No, there's no space. It's just Neoputa like
Oh, it's NEO.
yeah, Neoputa.
Okay, I was looking for that just now.
Here, I'll put in the private chat so y'all can. Sometimes I'm kind of hard to understand. I'm sorry about that.
All right, and then Ron, I guess you can round us
Okay.
out.
Okay.
Final thoughts and plugs.
Okay, so my final thought is that if we're talking about like being an ally, I don't know that I like the word ally exactly because it denotes a kind of separation. And that separation is always more beneficial to the people who are trying to oppose than it is to the people who are trying to work together with. Ultimately, what we need to do is work together and help each other as much as humanly possible. If we're not willing to do that, these corporations are willing to fucking move heaven and earth for one another. And they have means far, far, at least monetary means, far, far, far beyond what we could even hope to accomplish in our lives, even if we got together. There are 3 people in the United States who own more money than half of the entire country. The only way we're going to beat those people is if we work together. As for plugs, 65 million years ago, collided with the planet Earth. That comet was me. And now I have a YouTube channel. It's called The Rugged Midwesterner. It's I talk about social I talk about all kinds of things. I've got a couple of essays that I've been working on for quite a while. One of them is on this movie Pump Up the Volume, which is a 1990s movie with Christian Slater, and then I'm going to make a video essay about how this movie brings fascism down to a personal level. I also have an. That's not a joke.
I'm just very. I've never seen it,
movie.
but I'm excited.
I've also been working on this essay about Akira and anarchism.
Oh, hell yeah!
For like a year.
All right,
and
excellent.
The editing on both of those is going to be a pain in the ass because I've never edited something like that before, but I'm excited. I'm hoping to have both of those out before. Well, the Akira one, I'm really, really hoping to have it out on the day of Halloween. Because Halloween is a very special and very thoroughly unpleasant date for me, and I'd like to do something to alleviate that. But, yeah, that's usually I just talk about social issues, and quite famously, I talked about how ANCAPs don't understand anything that they pretend to understand. I have an entire playlist called ANCAPs Don't Understand Anything. Some of my best videos, actually. By other people's
That's how I
accounts.
found you.
Oh, cool. So you can attest to that quality.
Yeah.
But yeah. Go check it out if you're into that sort of thing.
Go subscribe to Ron's channel, everyone.
Ron, Saber, Christopher Salvo. And also, I want to thank everybody that showed up here today, all you guys. You guys are more than just subscribers and viewers. You are part of the struggle. You go through the same shit we do every fucking day. And, I can't thank you enough for spending the time that
Suck
you
My
have.
Opinion was on here earlier. Thanks
Oh
for
yeah,
reminding
Suck
me.
My
Go-
Opinion. Yeah, holy shit. Yeah, subscribe to Suck My Opinion for sure.
Let's not forget that.
But
Let's get Kamazot to 1,000 subscribers tonight, everyone.
that'd be fucking wild. But yeah, just want to thank you guys all for coming up and watching UNIDOS with us. As always, take care of yourselves and solidarity por vida.
Solidarity.
Solidarity.
See ya.
All right.